Today we're back with 5 more things that you absolutely should know as a beginner to 3D printing, but maybe you didn't. So hopefully you learned something new. And we're going to start off with this. And all of these are pretty much just completely empty rolls of filament. What are you going to do with the filament rolls when you're done? Well, I asked you guys in the last video and, well, yeah, you delivered. So a lot of you guys suggested to use these to wrap your cables around, whether it's extension leads to keep them organized or Christmas tree lights. In my shed, I have my Christmas tree lights and they're already wrapped around this, ready for this year. So I guess that's a very common sense one to use them for. However, it turns out that Make World and Thingiverse and all these places have a ton of designs built around these so you can use them on for future things. Whether you're turning it into a roll of filament that's actually a lamp, or whether you're using it to create storage boxes and many other awesome things as well. But my personal favorite is this here. This is a hardware rack that allows you to use the spools with drawers in it, put it over a base, and then you can just pull out all these drawers and fill it with all the little bits and pieces that you have all over the place. There's so many things you could fit into here. I could easily probably fill maybe 3 to 5 of these spools with little drawers like this. There's so many ideas like this, so have a look through, see what you can find, make yourself something cool, and reuse the spools. Now recently I've been doing some long prints, as in like this took ages, and I've been printing some other really cool things to show you in a future video too. But a really good tip to know is when you are doing really long 3D prints and things that you're going to be investing a lot of time into in one go, you don't want to run into any issues halfway through. So it's a really good habit to get into. Whenever you are planning to start a very long duration print, just maybe consider the fact that, have I run calibrations recently? Maybe I should check if my belt tensions are correct. Is there anything I can do to maybe clean around the 3D printer to make sure nothing goes wrong? There will be nothing worse than if I got halfway through this print and something went wrong, completely ruining it and wasting the amount of time it took. It took a very long time. The amount of time that it'll take you to run a calibration and then start the print, or maybe just make sure that your belts are tensioned correctly. Check that there's nothing that could maybe get mixed up in the actual print itself as well before you leave it, because in the long run it's going to save you money and massive headaches if things do go wrong. As mentioned, things that I would check is one, if you haven't done a calibration in a while on your printer, then yes, you'll probably be okay, but just run it. You might as well. It's going to need doing at some point, and I guarantee this will be the time that it needs it. 2, check that everything for your printer is maintained correctly, in the sense of check that you don't need any grease, check that your belts are maintained properly, check that all around the nozzle and stuff is nice and clean, and you're not going to run into any issues 8 or 9 hours into the print. 3, have a look around the actual printer and make sure nothing can fall or get in the way of it, because man, I have had it before where the bed itself has got jammed on like a cardboard box that was overlapping it, because my office is a nightmare and the whole print was just, yeah, well, I had to start again. It was not a great time. And I'm sure there's other things that you can check as well for your setup, but honestly, have a think about it, and before you put a super long print on, just make sure you've checked a few things just to save yourself in the long run. Now, something that could be super useful to know about is you can actually add modifiers or negative parts and all sorts of stuff to your actual models in the Bamboo Lab slicer. If you have I don't know, any sort of print that maybe needs a little bit more strength in certain places, necessarily not with this, but this is just an example I'm going to be using, you can actually right click and press add modifier and then pick whatever shape that suits you best. So for this one, we'll just do a cylinder because it's going to be nice and easy for you guys to see, and then pop that wherever it needs to go. Now, when you have this, you'll notice on the left-hand side here, you actually have your objects list. Now, if you actually click on the cylinder and make sure that's selected, you can see at the bottom, it says frequent, quality, strength, speed, and others, right? So on here, you can see that I can actually set an infill density to whatever I want, right? So if I put this on 50% and then maybe increase the wall loops by like 5 or something, when I now press slice plate, what's going to change here is the actual cylinder that I put will have a bigger infill density and more wall loops than the rest of the print. So if you needed specifically this part of the actual print to be stronger, have a higher infill, or have more walls because it needs it for any sort of reason, whether it's to make a print stronger, whether it's for a quality reason, that sort of thing, you can just add the modifier to it, and then this specific place will get those changes. You can also change loads of different things like quality. You can have ironing, you can do the speed of that part of the print, and many other things as well. So it's definitely worth taking a look through this and knowing about it. You can move this around wherever you want, and of course you can use different shapes and scale it around to whatever you need it to do, and that way when you do come to print the actual object, you can get those changes that you need without having to actually edit them in yourself. Other things that you can do, of course, is to add negative parts or add positive parts. So if you had a negative part, say for example, you actually needed to add a screw hole to something so that you could, screw it to the wall. You're never going to do that with a wedge, but it's just an example. You can add the negative part, scale it to the size that you need, and then when you slice it again, you didn't have to spend too much time editing in screw holes in another program. You can just add it in here. Knowing that you can make these sort of changes directly inside the slicer is definitely useful, and I use these ones quite a lot. Very quick interruption. If you have learned something so far, please do give the video a like. It would help out a ton, and leave a comment to let me know what you did actually learn. But also, look how many of you guys that are watching all these videos still aren't subbed. It would help out the channel a ton. I would very much appreciate it. The growth so far has been wild, and thank you to all you guys that have subbed so far. But let's get back to the video. Moving on, we're going to talk about something that confused me when I first got started, and that was supports. Okay. Supports. You have two options for supports. We're going to flip this thing on its head in a way that it actually needs support, so we can even talk about this. And the first one that we'll mention and show you here is tree supports, which is obvious for why it's called that, because it looks like a tree branch, right? It looks like a tree that's grown out of the ground. Perfect. The next one that you can get though is the normal supports, the one that's the default in the slices for most slices as well, and that gives you this. It's like a little bit of a zigzag, as you can see, and it goes all the way up. Now, the major differences that you're going to see with these is, look how much filament you're using for the normal supports compared to the tree supports. In most situations, you are going to want to probably, this is controversial maybe, I don't know, let me know in the comments what you guys actually use the most, but I always use tree supports whenever I can. If there's any situation that I don't use tree supports, it's usually actually with a model like this. If you actually wanted to print this in this orientation for some reason, or if you had another part that, it overhanged like this and it had a perfectly flat edge on the bottom there, you may want to use normal supports just to make sure that you don't have any sort of stringing filament at the bottom. However, 9 times out of 10, tree supports are probably going to be your better option. It uses less filament, which saves you time as well, and they're also way easier to remove, at least in my experience. But go crazy, guys. In the comments, do you use normal supports, tree supports? Does it matter? Does it depend? Let me know what you guys think, but 99% of the time, tree supports is where it's at. And the final thing that I wanted to talk about in this video is actually, if you haven't started getting into the 3D modeling side of printing, it is definitely worth doing so. If you haven't already looked into this at all and you have no experience, then a great place to start is Tinkercad. This is where I design quite a lot of like my simple models because I'm still learning myself, and this is a brilliant place to get used to how the basics work. Once you understand the basic fundamentals of 3D modeling for printing, you'll start looking at things that you found online as well, if that's what you usually do, looking at like models from Thingiverse or Bamboo Labs Maker World, that sort of thing, and you'll actually think, hey, maybe I can improve on this. Maybe I can actually make something of my own version of this as well, and you'll start learning more than you already did. A great example of this is this wall torch in the back here. I spent ages editing and making this actually usable, that you can put a cable through the bottom all the way through the top. It wasn't possible to do in the first place. It was actually designed just to put a tea light in the top. I wanted to use a flame bulb, and I wanted to have it as an actual plug socket wall torch. So while this isn't my actual design, the edits that I've done makes it way more usable for myself. And yes, if you guys are interested, the link to this is in the description. But honestly, learning the basics of 3D modeling is something that is absolutely worth it. Even if you just start very small and just do the very, very basics of putting holes in things, hollowing things out, maybe just chopping off stuff and cropping off edges, it's still worth learning about. So give it a go. There'll be a link to Tinkercad in the description as well. Have a mess around, have a fiddle. Thanks for watching, and if you did enjoy, then check out the previous versions of this because they're full of good information as well.